Hi, and welcome to our end of November update from the Wealthy Doctor Institute. Intelligent investing for the busy professional. We focus on simple battle-tested methods of investing that require just one adjustment each month to protect and build wealth. Hi, I'm David Ye, author of my book, The Busy Doctor's Investment Guide, How One Adjustment Per Month Can Save and Maintain Your Portfolio's Health. Although the strategies in this book are easy to calculate and adjust each month, for those who are new to these concepts in this book, or for those who are new to investing in general, this video will try to clarify what I do every month. Feel free to follow along every month until you get the hang of it. So this month we'll cover the topic of the month, and then we'll review our system, starting with, again, the 20-month moving average system, then review the MRI, or the monthly rotation investment system. Then we'll go ahead and review the rules for the 25% stop loss system for those of us who wants to invest directly in stocks. Remind ourselves about using the sector service system for those of us who are using it. So let's get started. The topic of the month is a topic that I've been introducing to the residents this month, not just about finances, but how it fits into overall life balance. It's not just about balancing work and family life. And especially in this holiday season, starting from Thanksgiving, we'll explore the role of how gratitude fits into life balance and investing. So, for life balance, if you take a look at the Wheel of Life, there are several versions if you Google this, but I like this 7-spoke wheel, particularly a nod towards the Tony Robbins grads I know are following this video as well. If you take a look, it's not just about balancing health with work, with relationships such as family. It's also incorporating emotional fitness, time management, finances, and celebration contribution. Now, if you think about it, if you take a look at every single one of these areas of life, and you were to rank yourself 1 to 10, where 1 is horrible, miserable, and 10 is your master of it, then you give yourself a number for every one of these 7 areas. And if you were to then plot like so, this would be someone's example of the Wheel of Life. So, for instance, someone may be really good at their career because naturally we spend so much time in our career, and yet at the same time we tend to neglect either our relationship, or maybe time, or maybe our finances. But you get the picture. It's common to have a lopsided wheel like this. And if you think about the Wheel of Life, and we're going down the road of life, and this is the wheel that we're rolling down life on, if it's a lopsided wheel like this, it's going to be quite a bumpy road. And if it's lopsided like this, it's very hard to go very quickly on this road. So, not only is this wheel identifying weak spots in our lives, but it's also identifying places where we're relatively strong. We can afford to maybe ease off a little bit on concentrating on those areas to concentrate more on other areas of our lives. Now, if you think about it, every single one of these areas of life, you can choose the order that you want to rank them in. So, for instance, does it make sense that if someone orders their health more than their work, will have a completely different life than someone who orders their work more than their health? And is it also true that someone who may value health more than their work may not necessarily have the best health compared to their work? So here we're getting a map for a Wheel of Life, for life balance. So if this picture is where our reality is right now, and this order is what we would like our lives to be, you can also imagine that we can order them in a logical progression. For instance, physical body and health. It makes no sense that if we don't have health, if we don't have energy, we don't have energy to work on the rest of our lives. Similarly, if we don't have the emotional health or resiliency to be able to deal with life's problems, then it's going to be very difficult to deal with the rest of life. Now, if you take a look at this triangle and you're thinking, wow, where have we seen this before? there's Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it is pretty similar in concept. And if we can get this blueprint or map of where we are and where we want to be, that's a good first step into achieving a life balance that works for us. Now, before we go on to trying to actually manifest a more balanced life, let's examine the difference between beliefs and facts. So in life, there are facts, and then there are stories or beliefs explaining the facts. So, for instance, if you take a look at investing, in the markets, there are charts, the raw data, and then there are the news stories that try to explain what's happening in the markets. Similarly, in life, we all have stories to explain any facts that come along in our lives. That's just the way human beings are. We're story-creating machines. And if you take a look at something objective, like, for instance, a colleague has your pen in his pocket, then you can think of several stories to explain that fact. For instance, maybe he pocketed it by mistake, or maybe he's this pen kleptomaniac, or maybe this guy really has it out for you. So when a thought enters your mind, how do we know it's a fact, and how do we know it's a story? Well, in general, facts have no emotion. If you have any emotional reaction at all, it's more than likely due to a story that you have produced to explain those facts. And when we come to stories, of particular importance is pain. So pain comes when our blueprint does not fit life circumstances. In other words, when our story or belief does not fit what's actually happening, the facts of life as we are actually perceiving them. And blueprint comes from two main types of beliefs. One is global, and that's, you can explain it as broad generalizations such as men are, Muslims are, people are, I am not. And these two particular I am and I am not type of beliefs are particularly powerful because they not only indicate blueprint, but it's an identity. People will violate their own values to be true to their identity. So for instance, if you think, I am a loser, and you start winning in life, you will probably self-sabotage yourself. Or if you think of yourself as, I am not lovable, you will probably be rejecting a lot of people reaching out to you. And then we have the rules-based beliefs. So, for instance, ever have this argument, if you love me, you would do this. Or, if I do this, you should do that. Or, no one should ever have to suffer in life. These are rules-based beliefs. And in fact, if you take a look at arguments, a lot of times they're not arguing over facts, they're arguing over rules. So, okay, when blueprint does not fit life circumstances, you get pain. Just remember, pain is temporary. Every winter eventually ends and spring comes along. But even though pain is temporary, suffering comes from the 3 Ps. In other words, if you think pain is permanent, it will never go away, that's suffering. If you think it's personal, it's all about you, and the truth is it almost never is about you. If you think that whatever is producing pain is pervasive, something we can never escape, that's suffering. And realize the 3 Ps are illusory. And then there's a special type of pain called fear. And if you take a look at all the types of fears that you experience, you can probably boil down everything down to just 2 basic fears. Number 1, fear is that I am not enough. Not beautiful enough, not rich enough, not smart enough, not educated enough, not strong enough, not old enough, not young enough, somehow not enough. And if I'm not enough, I won't be loved or accepted. Then what would be the antidote? Fear and pain cannot coexist with gratitude. You can try this exercise. Just for a few minutes, think about 3 things you're grateful for. It could be something grand, or it could be something small. Just if you have kids, just think about the love you have for your kids, or you just think about the gratitude of having the sun on your face, especially during a winter's morning. For my radiology colleagues, think about all the chest x-rays with COPD and just be thankful that, oh my God, we can breathe easily. You can think about things that 10, 20 years ago you thought you could never have, but now you have. take a minute and hold each thought and just really feel that gratitude. Just take it in. And when you have that, and if you've done for at least 3 different things that you're grateful for, now try feeling sad or angry or depressed. It's very hard to do that. So to take this to the next level, you think about our state of gratitude or state of fear. It's actually a state that we can often control just by controlling just 3 different factors. We can control physiology. In other words, someone who is depressed, you know how they look. They have their shoulders hunched over, they're looking down, they're listless, they're low energy, but if you roll your shoulders back and hold your head high, all of a sudden you have a whole different energy level. And then you're thinking about what you're focusing on. So whatever facts that you're looking at, then you make up a meaning behind it, the story behind it, between those 3. I mean, if you were in a poor state, would you make up different stories for the facts or better than if you were in a energy-rich state? Arguably, physiology would be the most important component of the 3 for our state. And for those of you who think, yeah, just positive thinking doesn't change reality, well, let's think about this. If you were in a positive state or resourceful state, do you think you would be more effective or less effective than if you were in a pessimistic state or an angry state? Which leads into our next discussion about language, because language can mean a lot. So for instance, if someone says, you're mistaken, or you're wrong, or you're lying, same event, different words, different emotional juices. Or what if you were to say to yourself, they betrayed me, or I'm angry, or this is annoying? Well, in the first instance, it's very emotionally juicing because, let's face it, you're focusing on what others are doing, specifically what others are doing to me. It's personal. Whereas I'm angry, it's more of a self-realization thing, just being aware of where your particular state is, and therefore taking back some control from that state. Or, this is annoying, now you're no longer really focusing on other people acting on you or yourself. You're really just focusing on just the facts. And you see how the more objective you become, the more attenuated the strong emotions. So, for life mastery, there are 2 critical skills to master. Number 1 is the science of achievement. The achievement is arguably simple. It may not necessarily be easy. I mean, look at us physicians. We had to go through college, study for the MCATs, go to medical school, study for the boards, get into a residency, study for those specialized boards, finally get to our practice and build our practice. It's a very simple series of steps that most of us have gone through, and yet, we worked our butts off for that. But it's definitely achievable. That's the science of achievement. But the art of fulfillment, that's a whole different ballgame. How many of us are burned out at our jobs? I mean, I've talked to several of you. I was in the same position 3 years ago when I suddenly retired. Burnout is very real. You can be successful all you want, but if you're not fulfilled, if you can't find the joy or gratitude in whatever it is that you're doing and focus beyond yourself instead of woe is me about myself, it's very hard to be fulfilled. So, lesson here is when you trade expectation for appreciation, that's when you become rich. And I started this lecture for the residents right before Thanksgiving, and I think it's a great way to start this holiday season towards the end of this year and set the stage for next year. So now, let's go review our systems. We'll start with the first one. That's the 20-month simple moving average system. Let's review the rules. If the price of the S&P 500 index fund is above the 20-month moving average, it's relatively safe to stay invested in the index fund. Otherwise, get out. If the 20-month moving average is our safety belt. So here's this month's graph. Here we take a look at the ending price of the VFINX, which is the mutual fund that we use to track the S&P 500 index. It's 203.81. And the moving average is now 189.13. So we're still above the 20-month moving average, so it's safe for this month to stay in stocks. So just as an exercise, let's take a look at how much cushion. 203.81 divided by 189.13, that's 7.8% cushion. In other words, if the stocks start falling this month, it can fall 7.8% and would still be in the relatively safe zone. But again, we'll take this month by month and we'll check again next month. So far, the observations for the 20-month moving average, despite all this uncertainty from last month, particularly with that really weird election, we stuck to a system which, correctly for now, kept us in the stock market. And this is despite all the negativity in the news and mixed forecasts. So we'll just wait and just let the system tell us when there's a signal. So next system is the monthly rotation investment system. So if you remember, for this system, every month you take just 3 mutual funds, the S&P 500 Index Fund, the MSCI Emerging Markets Fund, and the Inverse S&P 500 Index Fund, rank them, then sell the bottom 25% of your portfolio and buy the top fund, and rinse and repeat every month. So here's what's going on this month. Here's last month's prices, this month's prices. If we take a look at the winner this month, it's the S&P 500 Index. So if you recall, the emerging markets have been winning for several months in a row, but last month we started to roll out. And this month we continue to roll out of the emerging markets to go into, this time, the S&P 500 Index. And this is just a graph of the last month to let you know how the markets have been doing graphically. So under the current model, last month, we were roughly 75% in the emerging markets, 25% in the inverse fund. If we're supposed to sell the bottom 25%, the emerging markets is the worst this month. So we sell 25% of our portfolio's worth of the emerging markets, buy the S&P 500 Index Fund. So we end up with roughly 50% emerging markets, 25% index fund, 25% inverse fund. And since one inverse fund cancels one index fund, we're effectively half emerging markets and half cash. So observations for this month. We started rotating out of the emerging markets last month. This month, the emerging markets really did go down a lot more than the S&P 500 index went up. And this is to be expected. We chose relatively poorly correlated markets for a reason. Sometimes they both go up, sometimes they both go down, sometimes they diverge. This is part of the reason why rotating between these funds tend to work in the long run. So next system is the 25% trailing stop system. So just to go over the rules, if you really want to buy a particular individual stock for some reason, limit the risk to just 1% of your portfolio. And you do that by using only 4% of your portfolio to buy that one stock, and then immediately enter a 25% trailing stop loss order. If the stock goes down, you're automatically stopped out if it goes down low. If it falls down enough. However, if the stock goes up, specifically by at least 33%, you can go ahead and buy another block of stocks using 4% more of your account and update your trailing stop loss order to reflect the increased number of shares. Keep doing that until you're finally stopped out. So next system, just to remind you, if you're using Sector Surfer, if you haven't received a signal already, you might want to log in just to make sure. This month, we received a signal for Stormguard Armor. So remember, if your strategy is set up properly, you will get a signal through email or text. But I log in once a week just to make sure I don't have any pending trade signal. And this month, we actually had a Stormguard Armor switch signal saying that it's relatively safe to go back into stocks. So just a reminder, at least log on and take a look at your strategies. So summary for this month, remember, there are all different systems I just reviewed. Don't mix them up. Specifically, there's a 20-month moving average system. Do not mix this up with a monthly rotation investment system. Do not mix this with the dealing with stock tips system. And then remember, the sector surfer strategies, if you're using one, stick with it. Keep those questions coming. I know I talk to several of you personally every month, but for those of you who have only heard about me indirectly or maybe got a copy of this video forwarded to you by a well-meaning friend, here are ways to get in touch with me. Seriously, give me a call, email me, set up a consult. A few of you I've talked to, you know your stuff. You're fine. I don't have to worry about you. But for some of you, holy cow, it's clear you need help. Don't be bashful reaching out for help. The more you delay, the more time is against you. So, until next month, invest safely.